Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
It is officially the last Tuesday of the month, and as you know, the last Tuesday of the month, we do our live discussion for our group read.
Mhm.
Now, this month, we read Penelope Fitzgerald's The Beginning of Spring.
Mhm.
I think my copy was an e-copy, and you have the physical copy.
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody read this in audiobook version. I would have liked to hear proper pronunciations of certain things.
Yeah. Mhm.
But before we get into our live discussion, just want to remind everybody that for March, our March book is Caddy Woodlawn.
Mhm.
And we will be starting that with our traditional first Tuesday of every month reading sprints,
Mhm.
which is going to be on the 4th. So March 4th, Tuesday, March 4th at 8 p.m., you can come and read with us. We have a middle grade book, as it is middle grade March,
Mhm.
but you can feel free to read whatever book you'd like, or just use it as a productivity sprint time. So just that as a reminder. I'm excited to read that book. I have never read it, but I know it is a lot of people's favorites. So I'll be excited to see what it's all about.
Yeah, that's my childhood book condensed into my childhood is that book. More than Little House in the Big Woods, which is close, a very close second, but this is it. And I haven't reread it in my adult life. I I tried to start it a couple years ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago, and I couldn't even do it. I just thought, I don't know. I don't want to ruin it, just in case. And there's also, in case everyone knows, I'll say this again next week too, but there is like a follow up, a secondary book that follows Caddy Woodlawn even further. It's called Bitter Melons. And I think
Okay,
it's sort of short stories about Caddy's life after the Caddy Woodlawn ends. So
that's good to know.
just so everyone knows. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into our live discussion. As you kind of filter in, please let us know that you're here and say hello. I apologize for my camera. I need to figure out some technology things, so I apologize for the crazy lighting. But anywho, okay, so let's talk about our February book, The Beginning of Spring by Penelope Fitzgerald. This was one of our members' choices, so we had a few suggestions from our book club members, and this one was from Allie. So Allie contributed, I think, 3 titles from the same author.
Right.
So this is the one that was selected. So as per usual, we will discuss our ratings. So on the Goodreads scale, 1 to 5, 5 being amazing, how would you rate this particular novel?
Well, I'm not done. I'm almost done though. I have 40 pages left, so I will finish really soon because it's such a fast read. This has been a bad month for me. So, anyways, with where I'm at and where I think it's gonna go, which is kind of nowhere, I'm gonna give this like a 2. I think maybe a 2.5, depending on what we talk about tonight or what Allie will chip in when after she finishes it. So I think she's read quite a bit more Fitzgerald. So I'd be curious to see her thoughts. But yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I thought there would be a plot. I thought that plot would be more interesting or would go somewhere. And even though the back of the book and rereading it, it says what happens in it. Like this is it's accurate. I didn't quite register that it was going to be all about Frank. And not that I don't want to read about male characters, but he's just sort of milk toast. So it's disappointing that he's so blah. So yeah, 2 for sure, maybe 2.5. Um, I don't know if that'll change on finishing it, but yeah. What do you think, Dani?
I agree. I'm giving it like a 2.5, so on Goodreads it's listed as a 3. I, like you, really thought this was going to be more about Nellie.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't read the end of the book, but that's just me coming into the book and having that expectation as you start to read. I'm like, oh, wow, we're going to hear why she left her children. Like, I want to know more about this woman and why would she do this? And we get nothing of that. Mm-hmm. And it's all about Frank. But realistically, I mean, it's about Frank, but it's really more or less, I feel like, about everything around Frank.
Yeah.
And his response or lack thereof in the situation that is occurring. But all in all, like, it wasn't a book that I felt captivated me in a sense. Like, it had interesting topics, and there was a lot of, like, quizzical moments, I guess I could say. Like, there was things that happened that I was like, what is that supposed to mean? But I feel like this is a kind of book that I would have read in a class. Mm-hmm. And would have had to, like, dissect in order to understand. And as a reader, and in a lot of times when I read, I want to read for pleasure. I didn't really get a lot of pleasure from this book. And not to say that every single book that we read here in book club or outside of book club is meant to be that way, because I do read books that aren't for pleasure, they're for information. But I guess when I started the book, I had a certain expectation, and it wasn't met. It went in a completely different way. And I was like, what am I reading? Like, and I feel like the points, the themes that were in this book were things that I was like, I don't care. Like, I want to know why this woman left her kids. Like, that's all I care about. That's all I want to know about. I don't care about Frank. I don't care about Russia. I don't care about this Selvin guy. I don't care. I want to know why Nellie left her kids. Like, that's all I want to know. So for me, it was hard because, like, I felt like I was trying to figure out that mystery. So everything else that was happening, I was just like, whatever. I'm losing the point. Unfortunately, I feel like the point was lost on me as a reader because I was so caught up on a story that wasn't being told. But that's not the story that we were supposed to be following. So that's on me. I'm not saying, like, bad on Fitzgerald. This is not Nellie's story. This is Frank's story. So, but I don't know. Overall thoughts past what you've already kind of mentioned?
I mean, I don't know. I think I like Russian history, and I think I took this last time we talked too, that for, like, just my general knowledge about the world and events in history, nothing matches up in time. Like, it's all in separate little pockets, and they stay in little pockets. And, like, even though 1913 and, like, the revolution is coming, and all the stuff in Leningrad, like, all the stuff, right? Those all live in separate pockets. So I was trying to put this into what I knew about, like, the end of the Tsars and everything, and I couldn't do it. But also having fairly recently read Crime and Punishment again, and I read a short story that was set in Russia. I feel like within the last year. I don't think I finished it, but something else. I just think I don't really enjoy Russian literature or things set in Russia, partially because I feel like you can't trust anybody, number one. Number two, I'm never sure who was speaking because everyone has 3 or 4 names. So I'm always confused almost all the time as to who is who. And number 3, for everything that I have read, it was in George Saunders' book about short stories he teaches in class. I forget the title. It's a long title. It's got a purple cover. That's where I read the other Russian short stories. Anyways, okay, so I don't trust anyone. I don't know who's speaking. And also, I always feel like someone's going to get knifed or die, like the main character you're talking to, the one person you care about, like any second. So what's the point? So maybe that's inaccurate. Maybe that's wrong. But that's just sort of, I don't think I like Russian literature. And that's okay. And I know that that's okay. But I feel bad that that's okay. Like, I should just keep trying. So the whole time I'm reading it, I just was like, God, what's going to happen? Is anything going to happen? No? Okay. But who is this? Wait, what is this? I don't know. Oh, it's something. Nope, no, it's not going to happen there. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I just didn't care. That's
Yeah.
terrible to say. She's not a bad writer. It's very easy to read, certainly. I'm happy to read her again, absolutely. But as long as it's not set in Russia, I think I'll be better off. I don't know.
I think the name thing is interesting because from what I recall of reading, you know, Crime and Punishment and the Brothers Karamazov, and I think there's something else that I've read that's predominantly Russian. The names are always the catcher, because you're like, wait a minute, you have to start to like distinguish who's who and by their names. And I actually looked it up because I'm like, what's the deal with the names, right? So we have their first name in the formal version and an informal version. And the first name that is formal, like their birth name, it's not just that the nickname or like the informal name is not always a rendition of that. So like if their name is Alexander, their nickname might not be Alex. It could be something completely different, but that's just like their informal name. So that right there, right off the bat, confuses you if they're being referred to as their informal name, because if their birth name is not like, it's not like a, like how what is it, Margaret is Peg, like,
right.
Why? That's what that's like. Then they have a, what is the word, like patronymic name, where it's whatever their father's name was with a Vich or a something. It's
right.
One for male and one for female. And that's like, that's not their last name. That's just their patronymic name. And then they have a surname. So technically any one person could have 4 versions of a name, essentially. But in a lot of times what we see is we'll see the formal name with the patronymic name, the formal name with the patronymic, and the surname, and then we'll see them all of a sudden referred to by their informal name. So then you start to feel like there's like all these different characters. Now for me, I'm glad that I read the ebook so I could see the name, the lines, because then I could say, oh no, they're referring to Frank, because Frank had like 3 different names. And I was like, wait a minute, they're still referring to Frank. So it was like, because I was like, oh, who's this other businessman they're talking about? And I was like, oh no, it's still Frank. So if I had been listening to that on an audiobook, I would have been completely lost. I would have been like, there are so many people in this book. Like, who are we all referring to? Especially when Charlie comes and they refer to him as like Karlovich.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why would that? Why, he's English. Why are you even changing his name? Like, so that all gets very confusing. But for me, someone who has read like Crime and Punishment and Brothers Karamazov. Oh my gosh.
Karamazov, yep.
Thank you. I knew that going in. As soon as I started to see the names, I was like, oh, here we go again. So I just set myself up to like remember that there's going to be multiple names, and that I'm just gonna have to pay attention to who's who and all that.
I know, but it's still annoying and frustrating because you always have to stop and be like, wait a second, who? Oh, that's Frank. Okay, gotcha. So you're constantly being interrupted in this flow. You're trying to keep track of what's happening in the conversation, wherever it's going, which is probably nowhere. But it's like, really? Could we just not? And there are so many side characters. It's like 80% side character in this book, and occasional Frank or the kids or Selwyn. Like, but it's so many other people too. So there's all these other weirdos have all these other like bajillion names. I just was sort of getting like, I don't like this. I'm real sick of this. Like, can we just stick to like the 3 that like everyone else, like their nickname, their first name, and then like whatever itch or ovna you have, like, can we just call it there? And that's okay. Like, no, okay. I know it's me, but it gets really annoying when it's constantly interrupting your flow of trying to concentrate what's happening. Like, who is this guy now? Who is this random person? Oh, that's just Charlie. Okay.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I hear ya.
Yeah. Russian stuff, just not for me in that way.
Yeah.
Fiction is not for me, I think. Nonfiction, better. Fiction,
yeah. Well, let's move on to greener pastures, if not. So, the novel's title. So, the beginning of spring suggests renewal and change. How does this theme play out in Frank's life and the world around him?
Wait.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah, I mean, change I get, but I don't know about renewal. I mean,
yeah, I feel like, because the whole time I was reading, I kept thinking, like, why is this title? Like, I don't get the title at all. And the more I was thinking about the title when I saw this question, or when I had this question, I think it's more or less like, at the beginning of the book, he's very confused, like, why would she leave, and this and that, and then it like turns into like all this other stuff, political drama, business drama, his brother coming, what's he gonna do about the children? And I feel like the renewal piece is more or less about him kind of taking charge and having more control over the domestic side of things, and seeing that he could do it, and seeing that he has compassion for his children, and he has more of a bond with them because of this that had happened. Like, not that he didn't have a bond before, but I feel like what we see in his conversations, especially with his daughter, is that he's understanding them a little bit more. So I felt like that was like the renewal piece. The change definitely came, I feel like, with the fact that he like had a sexual relationship with the Lisa, or whatever her name was. And I was like perturbed by that, because it's very ambiguous too, because you're like, wait, he went up to her room, like, did he go in? Like, but it doesn't say anything. And it's only alluded to later, because he says he was her lover. And I was like, wait a minute. What? I mean, this isn't even behind closed doors. This is like, did he go through? I don't know.
Right. Are you in the same house? No? Okay.
Yeah. Like, yes. So I feel like he changed in the sense that he was no longer comfortable. Because I think he got comfortable in this domestic situation with Nellie, even though they're both outsiders. They're expats. They're not from Russia. And he mentions it like 3 times, that he grew up in Russia. So even though he's an Englishman, he's Russian to a certain extent, because he grew up in Russia. So I feel like he was very comfortable in the cultural dynamic of Russian culture and Russian nuances, whereas Nellie was very much not. And I feel like that is where, like, because he mentions how she was in the beginning of their marriage, and how it just kind of de-escalated, and she just wasn't as vivacious or outspoken or any of those things that he was really drawn to when he met her in England. And that really, I think, speaks to the political, cultural, and social aspects that they live in. And going back to your comment from earlier about, like, you don't trust anyone, you're afraid you're going to get stabbed. I absolutely agree with that assessment, because I feel like you get that sensation from this book and other Russian novels that we've read, because you always have that concern about, what are your neighbors saying? Are you going, is the Kremlin going to be knocking at your door? I mean, even in the scene where the police come to his business because the guard told that there was a shot heard, and he had to pay them off to, like, go away.
Like special vodka just for them.
Yeah. Off. Yes, to go away when a crime was committed to him. He was almost killed. His place was vandalized and broken into, so trespassing. And he is, like, paying them off to, like, just leave it. And then when it comes out that the kid turns himself in, he is then responsible for the MFer. Like, I was irate. I was like, how does this make any sense? you're going to be deported if he gets into any more trouble. And
Right.
he's the dude that came in and tried to shoot you. Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like the student, which I don't remember this from Crime and Punishment, but I'm pretty sure it was in there. I didn't realize, like, you could tell who a student was just by what they dressed in. Like,
Right.
that's funny to me. Like, but it also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But for him, he reminded me of Raskolnikov, the student, because he was off his rails. Like, what is going on? Why is everyone crazy? Why does everyone have, like, crazy tendencies and wants to shoot everybody over a girl? Like, oh my goodness. But that whole situation just made me so annoyed, but it reminded me, like, that's how it works. That's why no one wants to talk about anything, because you're the one that's going to get in trouble.
Right.
Not the other way around. So that was a really eye-opening, like, scene, because I was like, why is he the one basically in trouble here? Like, why? That doesn't even make any sense to me. So.
I know. And it just seems like, I mean, it's this heavy sense of dread, like, that's always in a book set in Russia. And I don't know what it is about it, but it is. And I don't know if maybe also it's like a 50-year time period of everything I've read. I think, isn't Crown and Punishment like 1870 something?
I don't recall.
I just feel like it's all like end of the 18th century, end of the 19th, early 20th, that it's all kind of together in time too. Maybe that's part of why it feels the same. And like,
I think with Crime and Punishment, because it's, Dostoevsky, we have to think about his time era of writing and the political, cultural and social themes that he was integrating was really all around the same time too. So because everything was just happening at the turn of the century.
I've never read Tolstoy. I would like to try, just because, again, he's so well regarded, and I would hope it would be less depressing and like creeping dread than everything else I have read.
Don't read Anna Karenina.
That's what I was thinking. Like, I haven't read it yet, but I pretty much know what happens, and it sounds like it's the same thing. Like, I don't know, man. Maybe I just got to stop. But yeah, I know what you mean. And like, it's interesting too. This book is set like 93 years ago from essentially today, because it's the end of this week is the beginning of March, and it's 2025. This is 1913. Like, this is less than 100 years ago happening. I know it's fiction, but bear with me here. Like, it's such a different world in so many ways. And I'm not sure what Russia is like now, but I mean, I don't, is it the same way? Is it the same feeling of dread all the time? Is it always everyone's still like can't trust everybody else? Or like, I don't know what it's like. I knew what it was like in the 80s vaguely with Gorbachev. Like, I remember the news when I was a kid, like hearing some things, and like the gene shortages. Everyone wanted genes in Russia. I don't know why I remember that for some reason. Maybe that's not true, but like the lines for food and everything. And I don't hear anything about Russia at all anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you hear about Putin and like all that stuff, but not regular life. You know what I mean?
Well, as readers and lifetime learners, we just gotta look for the right book.
I know.
Nonfiction and not fiction.
Yeah. Nonfiction, I'm fine, but it's just interesting. I don't know. And yeah, like, it's even when I'm jumping around, I apologize. Even when the student breaks in and like Frank is confronting him and talking to him and being like, what are you doing here? What's your jam, dude? Everyone is fairly calm throughout the whole thing. And that conversation kind of made sense, but also didn't. Like, student is clearly like has a screw loose, or something is obviously wrong. Like, what's going on in these universities with all these students who are like, murder is a solution. Like, I don't know. But it's like, what's your point here? And like, this is what you think you're gonna do here? Is this okay? No, wrong. This is why you're wrong. Okay, then leave. So it's like this nothing burger of an event. it seems a little tense at first when he gets there, but then nothing happens. The guy just walks away, and Frank is like, okay, cool. Like, de-escalation. Nothing happened, really. Like, some stuff got messed up, but, you know, nothing that's not fixable. And then now it's this.
And then his solution
thing.
is to call in the typesetter whose ever stuff just got vandalized, essentially.
Mhm.
And like, oh, take the day off.
Right.
And then that guy comes in and he's like, I don't work here anymore.
Right.
Like,
and his
I'm not gonna work in this
solution,
situation.
he packs up his like 5 little things and like, what are you doing with that? I'm gonna throw it in the river. What does that do for anybody?
Gosh.
Like, that's the
You're
thing that
throwing
they'll
everything in the river.
Why? Just take it home or leave it. Like, why do you have to throw it in the river?
They threw the gun in the river.
Yes.
They threw that in the river. They threw there's 3 things specifically mentioned being thrown in the river.
Mm-hmm. I read that part and I was like why? What the freaking river? Is there a river left?
He escaped that one lady by going to the river.
Yeah. I don't get it.
Throw her in the river.
I know. I'm sure there's
if he had just talked to her, like, he would have found out about Nellie. Yeah, if he would have just let her speak.
Mm-hmm. I mean, all of it is like, no, what? I understand like approximately 0 of the decisions anybody made in this book. None of it makes sense to me. I mean, what? Okay. Well, let's see what happens next. Oh, all right. Oh, put in the river. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's put
this book in the river. No.
Seriously.
So, on that note.
Yeah.
Fitzgerald is known for her restrained, precise prose. How does her writing style affect the mood and atmosphere of the novel? I don't agree with the fact, like, restrained and precise. I feel like, so I know I mentioned this before, at least to you, her writing is very reminiscent of Franz Kafka's writing, specifically in his book called The Trial. And the writing is so, it's like, I wouldn't call it restrained, I would call it constricted. Like, there's so little to gain any information from. You're kind of left to your own devices, and you have to, like, read between the non-existent lines. Like, I feel like every chapter I was like, what is happening? And then you're like, the next chapter just, like, goes on to another idea, and you're like, wait, okay, I guess that doesn't matter anymore. Like, and you keep going. And, like, specifically, too, the scene where, is it Lisa? Was her name Lisa?
Yeah, the nanny.
Yeah. When she leaves the little cabin and goes out into the woods, and the daughter follows her, and they go into the clearing where there's all these hands, and there's just people, like, groping trees, and then they, like, hi, and then they turn around and go back. I was like, what was that? And then it's not even explained. I'm like, is that meant to have been a dream? Were people fleeing? Was it a sex orgy? Like, what? I don't understand.
Yeah.
And then it's never explained. It's never mentioned. And then Lisa literally leaves that next morning. She, like, puts the kids on the train and, like, peace. Like,
yeah.
I don't understand. So for me, like, I don't feel like that's precise. I don't feel like that's, like, restrained. I feel like that's just, like, poor writing. Like, how are we supposed to know what that meant? We're supposed to look up our dream journals and see what that means? Like, clearly I'm not educated enough to read this book, because I have no idea what that was supposed to mean. Was it real? I'm assuming it was supposed to be real, because it's from the daughter's point of view, I guess. Like, she's the one that saw it, but then the Lisa was like, she'll forget it in the morning anyways. So it's so confusing. Was it like a opium dream? Like, what is it? What was it? And not explained. Just there. For what? I have no idea.
Yeah, there are a lot of little things that are like that in this book too. Like, these things happen, you're like, okay, this will lead to the next thing. And no, she just sets it on the floor and then walks on, and you're like, but we just had a chapter and something happened. No, Okay,
Yeah,
we're gonna leave this little conversation over tea at Selwyn's and just gonna sit this here
yeah,
and go off to the next thing. Like,
yeah,
then why do we talk about? Why do we do this?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean,
I think it does work for this because of how, in my opinion, Russian literature reads. It fits. It feels the same. It feels very dour. It feels creepy. It feels dread, like full of dread. It feels like all of that stuff. So in that way, I think that's very successful. It feels very Russian. Um, but I don't. She doesn't seem restrained, like you said. I agree with that. Precise, yes, maybe, but only precise to her or someone who thinks exactly like her. It seems more sparse to me. It's very sparse writing
yes.
and fairly simplistic, sort of like Hemingway is fairly simplistic writing, but big things happen. But with Hemingway, it's been a while since I've read him, but you follow things more and like there's
Well, and
follow
a
through
lot
on
of it's
action.
like allegorical, or
Right,
like you have something to reference
right,
as far as like this is what he's talking about. You know,
right.
this is what this is referencing to. This is what this is meant to be. What am I trying to say? For this, I mean, precise in the sense that, like, you're very specific about word choice and
Mm-hmm.
dialogue, and you're not it's not a 300-page book full of, like, you know, language and, you know, talking about the woods and all these flowery sentences. It's just
Right.
this. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
I would agree then with the precise comment, but I just,
Yeah, you have to do a lot of mental leaps to try and make any kind of connection to anything, and almost everything leads nowhere
yeah.
and is fairly pointless. So,
Well, and
yeah.
as you know, I'm not big on ambiguity. Like, that is not
Mm-hmm.
my favorite thing in books. Like, I want you just to tell me um, what you want me to get out of this book. Like, I don't really want to work for it. I want you to, like, tell me, like, or at least
Right.
show me or give me a good trail of breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
I just looked at this too because I knew it was for something. So this was on the short list for the Booker in 1988 or 89. I don't know what the cutoff was, whatever. But this was published in 88 for the first time, and this feels like a Booker book, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, sort of too highfalutin for the general reader, even the semi-educated reader. I feel like I'm a semi-educated reader. I've read a lot for a long time in lots of different genres and lots of different time periods and different styles and things. I don't know a lot of stuff. I have a lot to learn, and Lord knows, but like I'm not a complete idiot, right? And I used to like the Booker, the stuff like late 90s, early 2000s. I liked a lot of the Booker stuff that happened then. And a lot of that did seem a little highfalutin. I don't know why I keep saying that word, but like it keeps going in my head, highfalutin. This feels like this, but this feels, I don't want to say unreadable, but I don't understand it. Like you said before, there's too much is left. There are lines we're supposed to read between, but the lines aren't there, and there isn't quite enough language, or there's different word choices made that are less descriptive, that lead you in a direction that would be like indicating where the story is going to go, or the significance of almost literally any event in this book, like no matter how small it is. But that's not there. So it's just sort of a big flat plate of nothing with words on it. Like it's
I feel
not.
like the whole book was very reminiscent of the way that Selvin's dialogue was,
Yes. Yeah.
because he was very, like, when he spoke, he would not, he didn't speak in full sentences. He would be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, but please don't, you mustn't hate me for," and then he'd start off on another sentence, and like the whole time he was explaining that he was basically having an affair with this guy's wife,
Mm-hmm.
he was like so, like, he wasn't saying it. He was like
Mm-hmm.
circling around the topic,
Right.
and like I was like, is he trying to say that he was having an affair? Is that
Mm-hmm.
what he's trying to say here? And then he was like, because he was like saying like, I was waiting for her at the train station, but he wasn't saying that. He was just like,
right.
And then I found myself at the tea, blah, 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 and I
Mhm.
saw them. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you saw them and you didn't say anything? And then it like kept talking. And I was like, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Was he there to meet her? I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't just say what he wants to say. And that's how this whole book was.
Mhm.
It was walking around the pond, telling
Mhm.
the story without just getting straight to it. It was just
Right.
walking around the pond, but in such a way that it's a short book.
Yeah.
So it's like snippets
Mhm.
of information done in such a way that like when you finish the chapter, you're kind of like, huh?
Okay. Yeah.
What just happened?
I know. I mostly kind
Did
of
he go
went.
in the room?
Yeah, I mostly went. Okay. And they went to the next one. Like,
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and too, like, so I lost a lot of respect for Frank when he was doing the whole "I love you" like
Yeah.
in the room with people, and I'm like, are you 12? Like, what?
Mhm.
Because he was like so enamored by this Lisa, who's
Right.
like, he told her she needed to do something different with her hair, so she chopped it off.
I know. It was like, miss, you literally just met this man, and he made just a comment, and you went, oh, okay.
Yeah, like I just,
Let me cut off a foot of my hair.
it
What?
was just very, yeah. Sorry, my son is. Just watch that for a second. Yeah. Ugh. So speaking of Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about her for a little bit. Lisa Ivanova. So that means she's the daughter of Ivan. So that's that second name. So that's not her surname. That's just her patronymic name. And Lisa is probably not even her actual birth name. It's probably something different. So, what do we make of her? And do we see her as a potential love interest for Frank, a surrogate mother for the children, or something more mysterious?
I thought she would be like more of a surrogate mother, especially for the youngest daughter, whose name I don't remember. But then I thought, well, maybe like she'll make Frank and her will kind of have an affair. I don't know about fall in love, because it seems like that's not a thing that exists in Russian fiction. From what I like, people think they're in love. It's like, oh, I'm in love with this person, but I'm gonna stab her in the face repeatedly instead. Like, not the love that we would necessarily know or consider love. So I thought it would be more like nanny-ish, because that was his immediate need, and it was roundabout infer that there's this person that maybe, I don't know, and somebody knows someone, this lady who could maybe use a job, who maybe could leave but could also stay because her train is not too short. Stay it. But she seemed like she could have been mysterious, right? Like there's a purpose for her being there, really, and it's not just that this happenstance that her train could leave, but she could also make it, she could stay or whatever. And then it just ends up being sort of not like, okay, you sleep together, congratulations. I don't know, like I didn't care. It just seemed like a character to add to like enhance Frank's development emotionally. But like you said, it's like a 12-year-old. Like, I love you, I love you. What are you doing, sir? Your wife literally just left you like 2 days
A
ago.
week ago.
Yeah.
A week. It wasn't even that long.
Right. Like, what are you doing? WTF? Like, yeah.
I felt like the whole thing was super confusing because it was Selvin who was so adamant
Right.
about hiring this
Lisa. Yeah.
girl because she worked at the glove counter at
that department store,
whatever, and like I can't remember what his whole thing was because he talks weird, but like, oh, you must meet her, and Frank was really against it. Like, I feel like he wanted to find someone, but then really wasn't. I was so surprised that he did not take on that first woman that
me too.
Because I was like, oh my God, perfect.
Right.
There you go.
Right.
Perfect. She's even been a governess before. There you go. And then he like ran from her like a little like scaredy cat. Like,
that was
annoying.
What are you doing, Frank?
And then when she confronts him too, when she's
Right.
like, no, you definitely saw me,
Mm-hmm.
like several times. You saw me and you
Mm-hmm.
kept walking, and here I am because I really need a job. Like, I'm
Right.
on my knees. Like, please help me. And he was just like, I don't know who you're talking to, this Frank person. I'm not Frank. And I'm thinking, you're a freaking idiot.
She just had tea
Like, what
with
if
you
she
like
goes
20
back
minutes
there
ago.
and they're like, that was Frank?
Right. I know. They had tea together like 15 minutes before that. And it's like, no, I saw your face. Like, I know.
So when Lisa comes to the house or whatever, you can tell his first reaction is kind of like, he's a little trepidatious because she's young. And does she know how to take care of kids or whatever and all this? And it's like, first of all, beggars can't be choosers, my friend, because you clearly can't let him go over to your friend's house because that's a circus act in itself. Very unsafe for children.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've recognized that, which I was like, you should pat yourself on the back, because some people would just be like, well, whatever, like, they have kids too, so clearly it must be okay. But he really, like, I felt like he was really trying very hard to have his children in a safe environment and to make sure they were well cared for and that they were getting the things that they needed to get and that their input was a part of that. Like, I was like, wow, this is like very interesting that he is this involved with trying to do this. So when Lisa comes in and he like interviews her and he basically is like, yeah, okay, but you need to do something with your hair, which he didn't say like, do a different style. So it was very open-ended. So I get why she'd be like, okay, cut it off. But I feel like her character as an author, like creating this character, was meant to be more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It was a representation of what it's like to be a woman and someone of lower class. Because if you recall, like, in order to leave anywhere, you had to have your employer give you your papers. So you're stuck. And as a woman, you're not even like a citizen. And we know in the United States, it was the same way until, not too long ago. Like, just not citizenship. They're not considered the same as men. So when she came in and she did the things that she did, like, she took care of the kids, she added her 2 cents every once in a while, but not directly to him, really. More or less answering questions, but she never really spoke up. And she became his lover. I only think she did any of that stuff because that's the place that she was at. Okay, my employer wants to be in my bed. That's the role I have to play, to have a bed. And I truly felt like that's what that was about. Because she left once he gave her her papers. Because there's no other question. Of course you'd leave. If someone gives you an opportunity to leave, you're going to leave.
She got out of the drugstore, department store, which is a good job for her to have. And I'm sure by the time when she got it, she was like, oh, thank you so much. And after a while, you're like, please get me out of here, So she does get this loop. She gets out of there and she works for Frank. And she's like, finally, maybe I can get out of here. Like maybe I can really leave. Because there's no way she could have done this at the department store, obviously.
I mean, I feel like this is like a common thing with men of authority and men with power is they think that anyone that like sleeps with them who is under them wants to be there. Like, of course she loves me because she became my lover. No, you're a man of power.
You're my boss's boss.
Her meals, the roof over her head, her wages. She gonna say no? Because I'm pretty sure she has a little opportunity to do so. And even if you're the kind of man that would be okay with that, she doesn't know that. You two have known each other for 4 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I just, yeah. So I feel like she was more of like a conduit of like the women as a whole, and like showing that like this isn't a love story. This is a man of power, and even though he's unknowingly doing it, like he's just taking something from someone who has less power.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's it. That's all that was about. And other than her weird excursion into the woods, like I feel like her character was just like it was an empty vessel.
Yeah.
To show this side and the jump to that opportunity to leave. You know, as soon as he gave her those papers, I mean, she did that one last thing of going to the cabin, but that really just got her closer to being able to leave on her own so that she wasn't questioned when she left the house. She was, you know, like, so, yeah, she was like, whatever to me. I think the edition of the book that I have, the cover at least, and the cover that I used for all of our marketing or posts or whatever, it was very misleading.
Yeah.
Because it's a woman and a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, well, who is the woman? Is it Nellie?
Think, oh, it's got to be
Is
Nellie.
it Lisa? Is it, yeah. So it was very misleading. I would have much rather have been having the cover you have in my mind.
Yeah. It's just snow and the church.
Yeah.
You know? Yep.
So
some little poppies.
Yeah. I think kind of bleeding into this, I think we've been kind of hinting at it throughout, but like Fitzgerald leaves many things unsaid or unresolved. Do you find this frustrating, or did it add to the novel's depth and realism?
Yeah, frustrating for sure, but I think half of that frustration for me is just the Russian fiction aspect of it. Even though I know this is not Russian, but it's Russian. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that was half of my frustration, was kind of going, yeah, I don't think these are for me, you know, and getting annoyed with that. I think, like I said, I'm going to try reading her again. I am curious, because the other books that she wrote were not like this book at all. The other two options we had, it was like one was set in World War I London, right? The other one I don't remember, but it was like very different settings. So I'm curious to see what she does with her, you know, writing with different things. But yeah, I also think that I would have liked this more if I was reading this in the classroom, because then we would have had time to like pick apart lots of different things, versus just reading this casually. And like, of course, you're picking it apart because you're reading something and we're thinking people, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just more frustration. It did feel realistic to every other Russian fiction I've read, so that's realistic. But you know, yeah, I don't know.
It kind of reminds me of like when you read short stories, because short stories are so succinct in their storytelling. There's a lot that you have to kind of like understand on your own, or make out on your own, kind of like putting the puzzle pieces together. And kind of when you leave a short story, a lot of the times you are left with a lot of questions that you like work out as you recall what you read. And I very much felt like that was like how this book was, because it was so disjointed per chapter, and so many things were left unsaid and were left for you to like make your own decision. However, this was a linear plot. So Nellie left. Frank has to figure out what to do with the kids. You know, Charlie comes to visit. You know, Lisa comes. You know, like it's not like flashbacks.
Right.
It's not like someone telling distant memories. This is a linear plot. Things happen in order, and throughout that, we're just reading, and we're just like, what happened? Why did what? Did he go in the room? Like, I'll say that forever, because it's like, wait a minute. Because then later when he's like, yeah, we were lovers, I was like, were you?
Yeah.
You were?
Because last I saw you were in the hallway, And then,
knock on the door.
Right.
If I was her, I'd open the door and been like, was there something you needed?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because even leading up to that scene, he was saying something like, he was confused about their relationship. Because he, like, I felt like he did it because he didn't want Charlie to get there first or something. It was so bizarre. And, like, too, when Charlie even says, oh, well, she can come with the children because Charlie's going to take the kids. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why would Charlie take the kids?
I know.
You have less than this dude does.
I know. I just read that part and I was
You don't have servants. You don't have servants or anything to set up these kids.
Right.
He's got a whole household full of staff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you want to take the kids?
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I felt like there was an underlying story there, like to get the kids out of Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there's always that undercurrent of what you were saying before, of there's something happening. And we see that a lot throughout the book because there's a lot of references to publishing, because they're all being watched because they're the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
So what they publish is monitored because it can't speak against the Kremlin. It can't speak against, all these different things, all these factors. That's why, that's why even too, when he has the conversation with the student and he's like, oh, do you want something printed? We don't do that, or whatever he was saying, because you can't have radicals coming and printing your, anything against the government, But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot, even when he's talking about that other guy where the kids go with the bear situation. Yeah. That guy seems super shady. Like, and I feel like it was referred to a couple of times, but like really ambiguously, like, as in like, oh, he has all of this alcohol.
Right. And all this china.
But he doesn't mind that it gets broken. So I felt like that was like trying to say something. And I'm like, okay, so if he has all these expensive things, but he doesn't care if they get broken, that must mean that he's in someone's pocket. Like, that's how I felt. Like, that must be what it is. So, I don't know. There's a lot of undertones. And it would be more helpful if, like you said before, like I knew more of Russian history. Like, I feel like I have, like, a teeny bit of understanding, but, like, my timelines are off, and I just need to read my big textbook of the revolution.
Yeah, you do have that big thing.
Yeah, and then maybe I'd have better understanding, but we are just about at the hour mark, so let's do this final question. And I don't think you can answer it, but what did you think of the ending? Were you surprised?
I'll tell you tomorrow.
Yeah. So I don't want to like spoil the ending for you.
I don't care. I'll be reading it before I go to bed tonight, so because I want to finish it. I just want to be done.
So you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, Nellie comes back, but it's like the last line. That's it. She just walks in the door.
Was she like psych when she came back in, or like
no?
Just walks.
No, it literally just like says something like someone leaves, and then she walks through the door, and that's it.
Yeah. Here's the last paragraph.
Okay.
A horse and cab pull up outside. There were still a good few of them left for those who had time to spare or didn't want to spend too much. Toma, still dusty and splashed with soap and water, ran out, buttoning up his gray jacket as he went. He opened the door and Nellie walked into the house.
Yep. I was like, so I read that, and seeing I was on an ebook, I knew I didn't have any pages left, and I was like, well, that's getting 2.5.
Yeah.
So I was like, really? Like, that is exactly how to describe this book. super ambiguous. It's like, boom,
Mm-hmm.
there you go, done, over. No explanation, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we know enough about Nellie, which is nothing,
Mm-hmm.
to understand what happened there. She thought that she was going to embark on this fanciful life with her lover in this community of broader thinkers,
Mm-hmm.
and she was going to become more of herself, like she was in England, where she, thinks more for herself, is more confident, all of these things. She's going to be in this Tostolian community, and then her lover leaves her high and dry. She goes off on her own. She probably realizes when she gets there, like, what is this? I didn't sign up for this. Then all reality starts to hit. Oh my gosh, I've left my children. I've left my husband. I have no means to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows where I am, all this stuff. So of course she comes back because she's a woman. She doesn't have anything to her name. She's not able to do anything on her own.
Mm-hmm.
Where's she gonna go? What's she gonna do? Oh, hold that thought.
Yep.
I have to go let my stepdaughter in because she didn't bring her keys with her because she didn't wear her coat today. So
Okay.
you just go ahead and talk about whatever you'd like. I'll be right back.
Okay. Oh, all right. Obviously, I can't answer this question. I know now exactly what happens, and so do all of you. Sorry for spoiling, but also sort of not sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I thought that something after all of the non-events of this book, I don't know that I thought that anything would happen at the end here. I didn't think that Nellie would return. I see now that sort of makes sense, but I don't know. I'm really curious if any of you have read Fitzgerald before. Like I've said previously, I've gotten her and Penelope Lively confused constantly, even when I was buying books for this, because they seem to similar ages, similar subjects, similar shorter fiction. They both seem to have been, at least in the U.S., either unknown or sort of forgotten. So I wonder if anyone, especially in the U.S., if they have read Fitzgerald before and what they think of her and if there's anything that you recommend. Because, like I said, I will read her again. Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely. It's not that I didn't like this book, but I didn't like this book. Does that make sense too? Yeah, I'm really curious to see what happens in the last 40 pages that I have to read. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
I
finished up my thoughts, so I'm good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just what I was saying about the place of a woman. I mean, it's the same with Lisa. It's the same with Nellie. I mean, what are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's left high and dry. She can't really do anything on her own, so of course she comes back.
Right. I thought she would have gotten further than she, I don't know. I really thought, honestly, that she would not come back and that she would just go to England and just stay there. Like, I really did.
Yeah.
And the reason she left the kids is because she was like, you know what? They're Russian kids. Like, they should stay here with their father. Their father loves them. I want to be on my own and, like, start my own life again over, like, from scratch and live for myself. I'm just going to go back to England and, like, peace out, you know? So that
was the one thing that really, that was a difficult thing for me to understand, is like, okay, so you took the kids and you got to a certain station. Was that always the plan? Mm-hmm. Was to get as far as there and then send them back? Or I don't think it was so. I think when she knew she was stood up, mm-hmm. that's when she sent the kids back.
Right. She was like, yeah, I'm not doing this. Because I
Or
forgot about.
she couldn't do it. Like, she
Right.
could maybe survive on her own, but she definitely wasn't going to be able to survive
Right.
with the 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
And even when the daughter comes back and she mentions how she, like, couldn't handle the kids, because, like,
Yeah.
does she even handle the kids? Because
Right.
the governess probably handles the kids, and the nanny probably handles the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So when she was having to deal with the 2-year-old on a train, she's having a lot of difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense, like, if she got stood up and she was like, well, I'm going to go onto this community by myself, but I can't take I'm not going to be able to handle all these kids.
Right.
But I'd like to think that she came back for the kids, because as a mother, like, I can't even, my husband and I don't even go out on dates because, like, one, it's hard to find a babysitter, but two, like, the whole time you're thinking, like, well, I hope everything's okay. Like, I hope everything's okay. I could not even imagine what it would be like to be like, send your 3 kids back on a train by themselves and be like, just talk to the conductor,
right,
and tell him that you need to call your daddy. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
They were not old children. They were young children. A 2-year-old, a 7-year-old, or a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. Like, that's still young.
I don't know if Dolly was 12. I think she was younger than that. I'll see if I can figure it out.
Yeah, that was really disheartening as a character. But again, like I said in the very beginning of this discussion, this book was not about Nellie.
Right.
So, I don't know. Was I surprised that she came in? I think I had, like, a moment of, like, huh, but I wasn't surprised. Like, what else was she going to do? I feel like her other option would have been to go back to her brother, which I thought that is what she did.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she turned up there and then she continued on her way. So it was very confusing all around. But if anything, I feel like Frank should have learned within everything that he saw and observed during the time that Nellie was gone. Russia was not a good place to be at that time.
Right.
Like, he needed to, especially when the police were like, you can't leave the country because now you're responsible for this dude.
Yeah.
At that moment, as soon as they said, like, okay, now you're free to go, I'd be like, goodbye. Because just like the employers have the, noose around the neck of their employees, they're holding their papers, it seems like the country's holding everyone else's papers. Because it didn't seem like anyone had free will to just come and go unless they were from outside the country. And even that one guy who his stuff got destroyed and he decided he was going to leave, when he got his papers back, and he even explained, like, I'm going to leave Russia, didn't someone say, like, you can do that, but they're not going to let you back?
Right.
Because of something that he did, like something he had done earlier in his life or something. And I'm thinking, that's you need to leave. Like, as someone who doesn't have to stay there, clearly these are all signs that you need to get out. So
all they can find out about the kids' ages is that the boy is 9. And the youngest,
I feel like the daughter was 12 because she's the oldest.
Yeah. Well, so far in the first several chapters, no one said anything about that. Anyways.
Well, anything else you wanted to discuss? I know we kind of went in and out of different topics there.
No, well, you're going to just ask anyone if they have read Fitzgerald before, and if so, if they have anything they recommend, because I do want to try her other stuff. I really do. But just not.
This is my first.
Yeah, mine too. So maybe someone on the comments will be like, yes, you should try blah, blah, blah.
I know I saw, I was just scrolling through Kindle Unlimited stuff, and because it, like, knows what you read, it, like, will recommend certain things. And there's, I think, one of her titles that was on Kindle Unlimited, Garden something. I can't remember. But, yeah. I don't there was really nothing else. I know when you and I were talking about the book when we first started it, the bear scene was something we weren't too pleased about. But I think that was a real representation of the country folk versus the city folk, as in like, oh, peasants are lesser than, you know. I think it is very much an example of that. And I feel like animal cruelty is a huge thing in Russian literature because it is in every single Russian text that I have read. And I know this isn't a Russian text, but it is, you know.
But it's Russian. I mean,
it's Russian in a sense. It's in every single one I've read.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just a very Russian thing. Animal cruelty. At least as 100 years ago it was. I'm not saying anything now, but you know, in literature, yeah.
And maybe, you know, because I think every country in its literature, they have different themes that are commonplace, and they're, even though it's animal cruelty, it represents something else.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I can tell you, of all the animal cruelty I remember in books, it's always the Russian ones because it's so sadistic. So, anywho.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, this book is so succinct that it's kind of hard to even talk about much because it's all like it's all in the questions that we kind of asked, even down to the river. I did find it interesting the like where they get the alcohol.
Yeah,
it's like it's portioned out, like the Monopoly.
Yeah,
I was like, what? Like, I wanted to learn more about that because I was like, that is very interesting. I did not know that that was a thing. And that sounds like something I want to learn about. Like, I feel like there's a PBS documentary about it. Like,
I'm sure there is. I had heard about those things, but I didn't know they were called monopolies. And they said that the first time I was really confused.
Yeah.
Like, wait, no, that's a board game. Wait, no, what? Okay. All right. Oh, that's what they're called. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, okay. Well, I think that's that on our Fitzgerald book. Allie, if you're watching this in replay, thank you so much. We look forward to hearing your thoughts, either here or on Voxer. And if you're still with us here, remember that in March we are doing a middle grade book, and we are reading Caddy Woodlawn. So we'll be reading that. I'll be starting during our reading sprints, which are next week, Tuesday, which is March 4th, and that'll start at 8 p.m. Central Time. So feel free to join us. Even if you're reading something different, it's always fun to read along. But we'll be here for that, and we'll go from there. Do you have any other middle grade books that you're anticipating reading next month, or are you just kind of going with the flow?
I've read anything this month, so I don't know. Typically, I would have at least looked at my middle grade shelf ahead of time to put something out. The only one I keep thinking of is, I think it's called The Trumpeter of, I want to say Karamazov. It's not Karamazov. It's something longer with a K. It's like a like medieval historical middle grade. I think it's from the 70s, but I have a copy of that randomly. So I think I'm going to try and read that just because I don't know what the heck it's about. I don't remember where I got it from either. So I'll try and read that random book about a trumpeter. Other than that, yeah, I really don't know yet. I'll have to look this weekend. And how about you?
Krakow.
Thank you.
Krakow.
Poland, yeah.
Yeah. I went to the library yesterday.
Yeah,
yesterday. Wow, that feels like a week ago. And I was scanning the middle grade shelves and really like thinking I was going to pick a bunch of books, and then I ended up picking only 2 books. And once I got home and I was like looking at them more, I was like, I don't really want to read these. So I picked up The Evolution of Cornelia Funk. Is that what it is?
Funk, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the more I'm looking at that book, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to try it, but I'm like, suddenly when I got home, I was like, ugh, I picked the wrong book.
Yeah.
And then I can't even remember what the other one is. That's how much I'm excited to read it, is I can't even remember what it is. That's terrible.
That's okay.
Yeah. But what I'll probably do is look at my own shelf, because I do have a lot of TBR books that are on my shelf that I could probably just read on my own. But it all just depends on how the month goes. I really want to focus on middle grade books because I do really enjoy reading middle grade books when I can. But I've been like in weird spiral of fantasy, so either I gotta kick that habit and like get back into my backlisted books and what I usually read, or I'm gonna continue reading. It's hard to kick it because I tried to read a cozy mystery today, my Shades of Grey, and I was like, this is so boring. And the thing is they have brought me great pleasure in the past, but when you read so much fantasy where it's so dramatic and it's so, it like envelopes you in a different world and a different concept and different space and time, and then you start reading about someone who got murdered in like a greenhouse and something was stolen, you're like, this is so slow. Like I'm skim reading, I'm like, oh my gosh. So I don't know, I do want to read more of the middle grade. Wow, it's really bothering me that I can't think of what that book is.
I know, you told me, and I don't know what it was either. I know you checked out a bunch of nonfiction. That looks interesting.
Yes. And that all was like, I opened a few pages and I was like, I am not going to read any of this. Because the way that it's formatted in the book, I'm just like, this is too small of print and there's not enough pictures. I thought there'd be more pictures.
That literature book, you mean?
All of it.
Okay.
The things you should know is like not at all what I expected. So I'm kind of annoyed with that because it's not really topics that I thought was going to be in it. It's more of like just two dudes of what they think is things, and it's stupid stuff like Mr. Potato Head and mustaches, and I'm like, this is not what I meant.
Yeah.
I meant like common sense stuff, like stuff that if you're street smart, you should know this stuff. Not, hey, we were sitting on the toilet one day and I was like, I wonder why Mr. Potato Head is a thing. I'm gonna tell you about it. Dumb.
Yeah.
Anywho, we're getting off topic. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so appreciative of you and your time. Hope that you enjoyed the book, enjoyed listening to us talk about it, and we hope that you join us again next month. So, till then, have a good night.
Yep. Have a good week, everybody. Bye.
Bye.